It really sort of teaches you to be kind and be empathetic.
I don't think the question is how much, it's how. Like, how do you use AI?
It's a way of like just knowing when to push yourself and when to kind of pull yourself back and just be in your own space.
Whether it's something huge or something small, it just has to make an impact.
I think we all in some ways need to reclaim that identity. We can all be really happy and proudly Indian no matter where in the world we are. Hi everyone, welcome to the first Shiv School Roundtable, where we'll be discussing everything under the sun that's relevant to a young student entering the job market, just about to graduate. But before we get to all of that, let's start with a quick round of introductions from everyone.
I'm Naisha and I'm currently studying at Sciences Po Paris, pursuing a degree in politics and government, and I'm finishing up an exchange year in Cairo, Egypt because my minor is in Middle Eastern studies. I'm an avid reader and anything to do with arts or movies is something I'm always up for.
I'm Manat. I recently graduated from the University of Oxford. I did a master's in education. And before that, I studied at LSR at Delhi University and I did philosophy. And I'm currently waiting to get my job started in Bristol, which will be in education evaluation. Beyond that, of course, I love learning, clearly, but I also like to read. I like to go out, explore new places. But mostly I just like solving my Sudoku and watching really bad reality TV. But yeah, that's me.
I'm Aishwarya. I'm a graduate of Shiv School from the 2019 batch. I'm a political science and philosophy double major. I went to college in the US, but during my time in college, I randomly, as a hobby, decided to start a podcast. And by the time I was graduating from college, the podcast actually did well. So I've moved back to India and that's what I do full time. I founded my production company called Desi Studios and I run the podcast, which is called Desi Crime.
That's cool. Hi everyone, my name is Muskan and I'm a graduate from the 2025 batch and I'm studying Bachelor's of Business in Melbourne, Australia in Deakin University on 100% scholarship. And I'm also a professional car racer and I represent India internationally.
Amazing.
Hi, my name is Jyotir Aditya Sanand, and I'm a student studying a Bachelor's of International Relations at the Australian National University, Canberra. I'm primarily responsible for liaising with embassies and high commissions to organize embassy visits or visits to diplomatic missions for students at ANU. And in my free time, I tend to listen to music, but I'm an unabashed fan of The Office.
Good choice.
I think there's so many different spaces of expertise represented on this table, so many different countries that we've all studied in as well, so many different degrees among the five of us. I think I'm just curious to know what made you pick the path that you went down on, what made you pick the specific subjects. I think multiple factors can go into that as Indian young students. It can be some combination of familial pressure, some understanding of the job market and what performs well outside. There is passion and love for certain subjects that we study. So what motivated all of y'all's individual choices?
So I had a bit of an unconventional switch to what I'm doing right now. I started with doing a major in philosophy in LSR, and that is considered to be a pretty unconventional choice in terms of an undergraduate degree. But I wanted to keep my options open. I was very interested in asking questions, in thinking about different ideas in a larger way. So I chose philosophy because it's the mother of all sciences. And I just wanted to figure it out from there. And while I was studying, I realized it's actually education and learning that pulls me the most. And interestingly, that started in school because of how good of an experience I had studying at Shiv. And then I ended up applying on a whim to Oxford for a master's in education. And I've just completed that. And my decision to do education was led with passion because that is what I really, really love. And I realized that while reading or talking about education and learning was when I felt the most excited. And I felt like, well, this is something I can do for the rest of my life. If I have to do work, if I have to do a job that involves this, I can do it forever. And that's why I chose it. And I chose to go abroad because I want to do a master's in research, in educational research. And for that, I realized that unfortunately, I will have to go outside of India in terms of job opportunities, pay, scope, diversity, the level of research and teaching. And hence I went to Oxford. And I wish to work there, but my work might get me back to India and might not, but I'm completely open to that. I'll see where life takes me. But yeah.
Mana, just a question out of curiosity. I think a lot of people watching will hear of a degree in philosophy, mine included. And I remember my parents' reaction when I chose to pick that. It's a subject that I completely fell in love with. I had no intention of ever studying it. I took one, it's called Shopping Week in colleges outside, where you have a week where you can take whatever class you want and then see which one you want to choose for the whole semester. And I sat in a philosophy class by our philosophy head of the college. And I just absolutely fell in love with the subject and did that purely out of love. It had nothing to do with what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to law school, so not extremely related. I could have studied anything else. It's not related to what I do now at all in any way either. Is that something that you felt, this concept of a useful versus a useless degree that's not marketable out in the world?
Absolutely. I did philosophy because I was a pandemic batch in my 12th grade. And I would spend hours on YouTube. And I came across these YouTubers that would explain philosophical ideas in a simple way. So like Philosophy Tube and all these different sort of YouTubers. And I would just do that in my free time. And I absolutely, as you said, fell in love with talking about so many things and just questions, like asking questions and seeing where it leads you. And I was a little bit confused when 12th ended as to what I want to do with my life, and as are a lot of students. So I said, you know what, I'll just keep my options open and I'll do philosophy. But that was the reaction I got from a lot of people in India when I would tell people that I'm doing a bachelor's in philosophy. Most people would ask me, what job will you do after that?
Yeah,
How is
for is not really a good.
Yeah. How is that useful? What exactly will you do after that? And my response to them would be that, well, what I'm doing is not purely fueled by what kind of money I can earn after that, but also just by, what I want to learn and what kind of joy I get out of learning. So the term useful and useless depends on what's the definition that you sort of use for it, right? What do you see as useful and what do you see as useless? Am I driven by how the market works, or am I driven by what I like to do? So for me, philosophy was something that was a stepping stone for me.
What about the rest of you? Why do you guys study what you study?
I think what you talked about, useful and useless, is so interesting because for me, studying politics was a sort of compromise between what my parents wanted. I wanted to be an arts and literature student. That was my goal. Like, I wanted to study literature, I wanted to study visual arts. And then there was the question of, ye padh ke kya kar loge? Like, what will you do after this degree? And then I was like, I knew I was not meant for science. I could not do maths. I could not do science. So it was like, by elimination, I came, okay, we're doing politics. And even within that, I think I chose Sciences Po and I chose France because it offered me the broadest range possible. Like my first year, we had to do sociology, law, economics, all of these subjects. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do afterwards. And I think this made so much sense for me because I knew I was interested in this. And then I think the more I studied it, the more my interest grew. It was never like I was fully passionate about it since the get-go. Like even in school, I was never someone who read the newspaper. I never cared about politics. But I think the more I read about it, the more I started caring about it. And it was one of those things that just evolved. And now I know I'm actually applying for a master's in journalism as well. Nice. So I think it kind of just evolved from there. So I think in that sense, what you were saying about useful and useless is so important. Like for someone else, this may be a completely useless degree. Like what will you do with politics? I don't want to become a politician. I don't think I could do that. But I love researching it. And I think it's brought me to places that I could not have imagined.
Awesome. I think your logic for how you found the middle ground is exactly why I was a double major and I had poli-sci as well. Because I was like, just this philosophy alone is not seeming very nice. So I will attach the political science.
To draw some parallels with your journey, even my interest in the subject, which is I'm studying international relations, right? Until 10th, I did not like history. I did not like politics. And I didn't like sciences either. And the jump between 10th and 11th in terms of the sciences, the depth in which you go into each subject is very vast, which is why I was confused in my 11th and 12th. But luckily, in IB, I studied global politics.
Yeah.
And when you engage in discussions about contemporary events, grand power rivalries, rise of powers, shifting global orders, all that really caught my eye, which is why my interest in the subject evolved with time.
I think I really relate to where you're coming from because even for me, I've realized that with time, you just figure things out and you just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And you just wait for things to come to you because you didn't plan to do education, you didn't plan to do what you were doing, and well, you ended up in Australia. So I feel as long as you're following what you love, you'll end up where you have to end up.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, I also feel like this is something that parents might relate to, and even we can relate to it when we were in school. That in 10th and maybe sometimes in 12th, you feel this kind of pressure to make a huge decision that at the time feels like this is it. Like I make this decision and I'm caged in what I have to do forever and ever. And as we all grow up, you realize that nothing is as permanent as you think it is. So if your child is confused in 10th and in 12th, is they don't know what to do and they're confused and want to keep their options open, I think it's actually a lot of times a good thing, because clearly they're interested and they are curious about doing a lot of things and exploring the world and seeing. And once you step out of your city, your country, and I think you guys would relate, like you learn so much from just experiences, from just talking to people, from just being outside of your comfort space, that no degree or no education can teach you as such. So if children are confused at 10th and 12th, I think it's a good thing, and they can figure it out as they go. And people change professions at 20, 30, 40, at whatever age. And we might be doing very different things 10 years from now, who knows? But that curiosity, I think, is super, super important.
I think what also drives that pressure a little bit is just the way that the system is set up. For example, you can't go to medical school without knowing exactly which subjects you're studying in 11th and 12th. You can't be a pilot if you don't have physics.
Yeah.
I think just the way the system is set up makes that decision so important, because what's coming next literally depends on what you did back then. I think if the system can transform over time, over years, and become more lax, because this is not the case abroad. There is not this intense pressure in 11th and 12th to figure this out, because you have 4 more years of college before you really need to make that decision. So I think if the system changes and becomes more lax over time, so will people's attitudes. But I think going back to something you were saying, Jyoti, is that I think just in how interconnected the world is, and we're making these decisions now. What did we want to study? Where did we want to go to college? What countries we're picking? How much access we have to information and news online. I think we feel geopolitics as a generation in a way that even 20 years ago, people did not. And it's in every facet of our life. We can see moments in our own lives where we're like, oh, this was not personal against me. What I'm experiencing is the literal dynamic between two nations. This is literal economics at play. This is the consequence of tariffs, or it's the consequence of border wars, whatever it may be. Have you guys had those moments in your life where you're looking at a policy decision that's affecting you, whether that's when you're applying for your visas, whether that's when you're applying for grants while you're in college, whether it's the atmosphere on your campuses while you're abroad, whether it's being able to fly back and forth between India, making friends, whatever it may be. Are you feeling geopolitics in your day-to-day life, and what are those moments?
I think for me, actually, this is something that happened yesterday, that I need to go back to Cairo now, and I'm looking at my visa. And I was trying to apply for a visa, and the first thing it said was, it looked at my nationality. As soon as I put it in, it was like, you're not allowed to travel alone. You need a tourist guarantee. And that made me have this, like, even the first time I was going, it made me have this huge moment of panic where I'm like, where am I finding a tourist agent? Because I'm with a university and they're the ones guaranteeing me. And then yesterday when I looked at it again, it said, I'm not even allowed to travel solo. So it was like a big moment of panic where I contacted my university. I'm like, hello, what am I doing? I think from what I have gathered so far, it's just, like you said, geopolitical relations. The relations that India has with Egypt are not very strong. Even the Indian diaspora in Egypt is basically not, there's like very few Indians that I would find there. Even though culturally the countries are so close together, politically it's just something that doesn't gel well, especially in the Middle East. Politics and geopolitics, because I'm studying it, it plays such a huge role in anything. Even so a little bit of context is that I studied on the border of like France and Italy, where migration and immigration is like a huge issue, to the extent that there are like police, like soldiers, gendarmerie forces at the borders. Like if you walk maybe half an hour from where I studied, you would see like people in full gear with rifles standing there. And it's so scary to do that as someone who is not white in a country. Because I, for example, had a friend who was just stopped at the border just because he was not white. You get your identity checks done, and it's always like this moment of panic where you're like, have I done something wrong? I know I haven't. But then there's like, whenever I'm showing my passport or something, I'm like, okay, please let me through. I'm not really,
I think on the flip side of this, I went to college in Michigan, which is the northern border of the US, and that borders Canada. So it's not a migrant entering country with a white country. It's a white country and a white country. And obviously, that's a simplistic way of describing two nations. But to me, it was wild to go to Detroit and see a border where if I throw a rock, it'll actually land there and there's no personnel anywhere. There's just like a tiny little river in the middle. And I'm just like, this is a country border. Like, I can't wrap my head around how peaceful and normal. Obviously, the southern border of the US is much different than that. But that was just a crazy experience for me.
I agree. I think there are two aspects of studying abroad that made me really feel that geopolitics in my life. And one was finding work after you have studied there. And the second was, of course, visa. And with the first thing, once you study once you're done with your studies, you start looking for jobs. And as Jyotir said, the economy is quite bad. And it's bad everywhere. So, and finding a job is tough for young people right now. It is recorded in most countries. So you're looking for jobs and you're qualified and you studied at a good place and you have the skills that are required. But I faced a lot of problem going through that last stage and getting the role because they anticipate that I will need visa sponsorship after, 2 years, for example. Right now, I have my grad work visa, so I can work. But in 2 years, if they want to keep me on, they're going to have to sponsor me. So to save that money, they'd rather just hire someone else who's in the pool, who already has a visa, who's a British national. So that was a huge obstacle to, get a job because you have everything that you need, but these are structural barriers that are restricting you from succeeding in what you want to do or getting the job that you are very much qualified for. So that's something that most international students have to struggle with, no matter how brilliant they are and no matter how hard they've worked. And it's just a huge struggle for us. And then on the other hand, with visas, my parents had to fly to the UK for my graduation. And it was a huge, huge struggle because now there is much more patrolling of who's entering and who's exiting these countries. And because my last name is Khan, when our visa got declined, that we can't know for sure if you're going to come back. And this is something that I discussed with my professors, and they said it is a real geopolitical issue right now, which is visa racism.
Yes.
That they, sort of make judgments about your application and why you want to visit the country, why you want to study here, why do you want to stay here, based on which country you're coming from and what is your nationality, what is your background. And, these are actual barriers that people who just want to simply come there and study are facing. And so you feel it in a lot of aspects of what you're doing. So it might be every day, like you said, or it might just be like at really, really monumental moments like your graduation and when you want to get a job. So you have that double burden as an international student to navigate that when you go outside to study.
Yeah.
Adding on to jobs and qualifications, like as for Australia, I think you might relate to it. How we live in India and how it is in Australia, it's very different. We are not used to like, okay, we're still in school, we're focusing on our studies, we're not focusing on getting a job. Our parents are providing it for us. Whatever we require it, they are there for us, right? But when we do go abroad, like I'm going for my bachelor's, right? And if I go look for a job, they're like, you don't have any previous job experience at the age of 18, you're not going to get this job. So you have to start at the rock bottom where people abroad are starting at the age of 16. And you feel like you're already lagging behind. So I feel that's another thing where I was like, Australia focuses more, yes, qualifications matter, your degree matters and all, but also just about your work experience. You have that or not. And even when you put it on your resume, they're like, what did you learn from this job? It's not what you were doing, it's what you learned from it.
I think adding on to the structural barriers aspect of things, it really points to the liability of being foreign. You're entering a foreign land, completely different culture, completely different to how you were brought up. And that itself is a big shock to get accustomed to. On top of that, when you have things like visa racism, and with the rising anti-immigration sentiment, just the feeling of being a part of the community just gets lost. And especially since the last 2-3 years, primarily since last year, the rise in anti-immigration sentiment has affected international students across the board.
Yeah.
Which is why these structural barriers just create such an unsettling atmosphere for international students.
Yeah.
And more to the work experience part of what you mentioned, because there's a lack of part-time working culture in India, there's not a lot you can do with your time here. Which is why I face the exact same thing, that at the age of 18, you're asking me to have work experience. That's alien.
So yeah. Was.
Which is why you have to start at the rock bottom. You are completely alien to the land, to the culture, to everything. And then you're constantly being made to feel that you're an outgroup here, very clearly.
Right. We've recently seen the killings in the US by the US border forces. There was the ICE killing.
Yeah.
And I think, again, all of this adds to the fear and the paranoia among the community of young people. I remember when I was going to college, 2019 is when I applied, and I knew that 2020 was going to be an election year in the US. And we knew what the two options were for administration. And oh my God, the conversations in my home about what would happen to my life as a student there if it went one way versus another, it was a complete gamble that I was taking. It was kind of like me shooting in the dark and not knowing what was going to happen to my life. It went the way I wanted it to go, and my 4 years went by peacefully. And I was in a very small college town, which was a little bit more immune to sort of the more political workings of larger cities like New York and states like California and whatnot. But did you all feel like you belonged in the communities? So on the social front, while we discussed the policy bit, on the social front, did you all feel like you belonged where you were?
I think I'll just go about that. It's very easy for people to pin the actions of one person and characterize it as a stereotype or as the standard way to operate for that specific community. And it sort of encourages distrust. It breeds distrust. It breeds suspicion.
Right.
Which becomes difficult for the communities that are spending money to gain education there. Ultimately, international students contribute a lot to the economy of these countries, which shouldn't be ignored by any means.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that big factor at play there, where the actions of one person or 2-3 people, 2-3 exceptions, get pinned on the entire community.
I think I'll flip that around and also say that we're guilty of doing that when we, as a young population of Indians, we're such a huge diaspora outside. When we find ourselves outside, we have preconceived notions about what these gigantic countries are like. So I think we go in there with our own equally strong preconceived notions. We have groups of friends that are just Indians, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we're going out there for a different kind of cultural experience, and that different culture only comes from the people of that culture. So if we could all broaden our horizons and kind of find ourselves in uncomfortable conversations with people we don't initially completely gel with, I think we'll just end up having much richer experiences. So just as equally as we want them to avoid their preconceived notions of us, I think we're all kind of equally guilty of doing that. Maybe not to the same extreme, but to some degree for sure.
I was just going to add with the culture bit that when I went, I was only there for a year. And when I initially went, I did face that kind of initial barrier with people who were not from my country, that I couldn't understand how to make conversation with them, because their way of socializing is very different from how Indians do it. So it was a thing that I had to adapt to. And initially I was very, very sort of, I would hold off, and I would say, you know what, I can only relate to people that who are from my culture, and I only talk to them. But over time, I realized that it's putting yourself out of that comfort zone, because you've come here precisely, as you said, to get exposed to that culture, to meet different people at the same time. So you have to sit through small talks that are going nowhere.
Yeah.
You have to, force questions and ask them about their lives so that some commonality comes about and you get a conversation going and you actually connect with the other person.
Yeah.
And this was something that someone who just came to Oxford, a friend of mine, who was like, how do I talk to them? I don't know how to talk to them. And I was like, unfortunately, you just have to talk.
Yeah.
It's about finding that commonality. I connected with a lot of people from different cultures in my department because we have something common to talk about. We loved education. We loved our course. So we would talk on and on about it. But you have to tweak yourself a little bit to adjust to the culture. And that's not changing yourself. That's simply adapting to what life has thrown at you, I think.
On that note, I think I had a very different experience experience. For me, at least, language was a big issue. I'd been learning French for almost like 7 years before I went to France. And I go there and I realize I'm not able to speak a word of it. I don't understand anything they're saying. I forced myself to get a job at a cafe just so I could practice French. And that was like, I think that is the only reason
How
I
many
can
orders did you get wrong?
so many. So many. I feel because, and there I was also learning Italian simultaneously because it was an Italian cafe and people were trying to speak to me and I'm like, I don't speak it. I'm sorry, I'm really trying. But I think it's a way of like just knowing when to push yourself and when to kind of pull yourself back and just be in your own space.
I also feel that, when we are going abroad, we go an extra mile to make an effort and understand the culture around us, people we're surrounded with. Like basic politeness. Like we were talking about how abroad people actually stop their car and let you cross the road if you're a pedestrian. So it's like basic courtesy that, okay, you just nod at them, thank them, and walk, right? And I feel it also comes from a place in the heart. Like, okay, it's just like, you should be polite. And in addition to that, the people who do make an effort to come to India, the foreigners, they do try and understand our culture. So I think it's a give and take relationship. And as long as you're not going against their culture and provoking it, they're not going to say anything to you and you're safe.
And I think I want to put this out there as well. This whole conversation, sometimes it can feel a little bit scary. It can feel a little bit intimidating. It can feel very pessimistic for young people wanting to go out. It's a lot of negatives to it that are always portrayed all the time with the news cycle, how much information we have on our phones all the time. I think the plus side to that, which I feel like I fortunately got to experience, is that while all of this is true and these might be the geopolitical workings between two nations, there is so much peace and freedom in coming back to the land that will never make you question where you belong. It'll make you question 100 other things because there is no such thing as a perfect country. But whether or not you belong here is not the question at all. And so to me, it's been really good coming back and reclaiming that, which is the reason behind the name for my company is Desi Studios and Desi Crime. I'm sure some of you know Deepa Khosla with her company in While. That was again, the fact that she has an oil that she's called the Chumpy Hair Oil is amazing to me. Like it's a young company being sold in Sephora across the world. It's another attempt by a young person. It's saying we're reclaiming our roots. And I think the country is taking a lot of strides in helping us do that with the number of like Make in India grants, the number of sort of the importance and emphasis being placed on working from here, creating something here, building here, producing for people here. And I think we all in some ways need to reclaim that identity. We can all be really happy and proudly Indian no matter where in the world we are. But I think this is talking about workspace, talking about going out, looking for jobs, the job market, these relationships between nations. There is a conversation we just cannot have without a conversation on AI. And I think it's consumed our workspaces in our college lives for the last, I would say, 3-4 years now. And my experience with that on a college campus was a little bit different because I was telling you guys before we sat down that in my final year is when ChatGPT sort of thrust AI into the forefront. Before that, it was this more technical term not everyone understood. Students didn't really know how to engage with it. It sounded more like coding language that we didn't quite know about. But my final year in college is 2023 and suddenly we have ChatGPT and professors didn't quite know what to do with it. So while they were figuring that out, their first response was, koi use nahi karega. Like if you use it, you're going to get caught. You'll be charged with plagiarism. It's an automatic like B on the paper that it is. And we have softwares ready to pick up. If you've used it, we can read that language and understand it. It was a complete like blanket statement on all use of AI. What I'm wondering is your guys' experience with some of you who are in college now, have most recently entered college. Is the experience any different on your campuses?
It definitely is. I also feel like a little more about AI. AI learns on the basis of algorithm what input you give in, right? It's machine learning. So basically, what you wanted to learn, it'll learn that and then it'll give you the output you want. So in my university specifically, they're not against using AI or ChatGPT. They're like, you want to use it, you're free to use it as much as you like. Don't use it for research, but use it to make the foundation of your research stronger. And it should be your own idea, but to add a little more to that idea, you can use ChatGPT or AI for it because, yes, at the end of the day, we're humans, and humans cannot do what robots do, and robots cannot do what humans do.
So does that mean you can use text from an AI generated prompt in like a research paper you're writing? Let's say you're writing your thesis in your final year.
Not exactly. It's like you take the idea from it and you write it in your own words. So like you basically paraphrase it, but it's more of like the research paper foundation, you're writing it on your own, but to make that foundation stronger, you're using AI for it.
I would say I have a very complicated relationship with AI for
Please
2 reasons.
Tell us.
First, because I work in education, and that is a huge thing that is being talked about in classrooms, outside classrooms. How much do kids use it? How much do students use it? How much do teachers use it even? But also because I'm in research, and academia and research and writing has been something that has been done by people, and it has been kind of held up or has been sort of been exclusive to people who can't read a lot, who can't sit for hours on a desk and sort of, go through books and papers and produce this amazing research paper and become famous academics. So it is a complicated thing because, so recently, like only this year, I think, Oxford officially gave access to ChatGPT for all their students, which means that they're saying, yes, you can use ChatGPT. You can use AI. You can use them for your assignments. But the way that we were told to use AI at Oxford was that, one, use it very, very critically. It is not something that is going to teach you. It is not your professor. It is not completely true. It is, again, only giving you what already exists on the internet, and oftentimes it hallucinates, right?
Yeah,
I've
it
had
does.
ChatGPT send me back like made up research papers.
Oh yeah.
And I've had to be like, this does not exist.
Yeah.
So, and I would only be able to point that out because I saw that title. I didn't just cite it. I went and looked that paper up, and I realized this doesn't exist. So you have to ask questions back to ChatGPT as well. You have to be very critical with the way that you use it and not just mindlessly copy paste whatever it gives you. And secondly, this was something that someone asked me in a job interview recently, which was, we want to install AI in schools. How would you go about, how much AI would you use in running classrooms? And I told them that I don't think the question is how much, it's how. Like, how do you use AI? AI is a tool. It's not the thing that will teach you or that will give you your entire education. It's simply a tool, like an Excel sheet is a tool. A calculator is a tool that makes your job a little bit easier. So you can ask ChatGPT, for example, why don't you help me, write my outline for my research paper? What headings could I use? Could you give me some papers I could read? Can you give me some ideas of where I could start off from? Could you give me names of authors that have written about this? So this is the way that you use it as a tool, but you still do the work yourself. You still do the thinking and the writing and the questioning yourself. I think it's stupid to be like, we're not going to use AI. You can't do it right now. Everyone is using it. If you don't use it, unfortunately, you will be left a little bit behind because everyone is using it. And I've seen misuse of ChatGPT where people are completely like making ChatGPT write their research papers and they get caught, right? And the problem is that this is not just affecting your grade. You also see it in the kind of outcome that you feel as a student when you've just used ChatGPT to write your papers. There's no actual learning going on, right? You're not actually learning anything. You are also mindlessly using it. So just for yourself also, don't completely rely on ChatGPT. Use it, but use it as you question.
I think academia is just so different from the space I'm in.
Yeah.
For me, AI platforms, ChatGPT being one, something like Veo and Sora, which are video generating online AI platforms, have completely transformed the nature of my work. When I used to do research for Desi Crime to write an episode, each episode is, let's say, 10,000 words long. It's a full paper in itself, and I'm writing one every week for the last 6 years. And when I'm doing that, the research on that case is the largest, most time-consuming piece of the puzzle for me. It takes anywhere from 20 to 30 hours that needs to be done in 1 week, less than a week, so then I have time to write that research out and produce the episode, then record it, have it edited and be published online. It has gone from that 20 to 30 hours to 10 minutes. And that's absolutely wild to me. The same has happened for our editors with these platforms like Sora. there is footage that simply doesn't exist online. So when we're trying to depict a picture to an audience, we can't elicit the right emotion in the audience because we can't visually represent it the right way because there isn't a video available for what we're trying to show. And now we can create every micro detail.
I think to more of what to add to more of what you said, I think you've really shown the organic journey from why use the technology to how use it. And those questions follow with any sort of technological advancement. Whenever there's a huge leap in technology that makes things easier within the flick of your fingers, there is resistance towards it. And to progress from the why to the how itself is quite a big leap. And how to use that technology itself is quite an important question, especially with AI. Even AI detectors are not accurate. AI is trained on data sets, and data sets are prone to biases. As far as the AI policy is concerned, with research-oriented subjects like, say, politics, IR, which relies on human intellect, which relies on the synthesis of information by exploring informational terrains which were previously not known, to outsource that entirely to AI is unreliable, especially when it's prone to these biases, these data sets. And ultimately, these data sets are coded by humans. And they're prone to biases, which is why using that technology, this developing safeguards against its misuse is equally important, which is where we're struggling as well, because to develop safeguards, reliable safeguards against AI just seems inconceivable. If you can, I just saw this example online. Someone ran the preamble of our constitution through an AI detector. It was 100% AI.
Yeah.
Because it's too perfect. It's written too well. That is a thing, right?
Exactly.
And like what you were saying about bias, and that you also understand there's a inherent understanding that it's reproducing information. All knowledge is predominantly it's dominated by hierarchical knowledge that has from the start till now has put cultures into hierarchies and categories, right? And it takes a lot of criticality to understand that as well. And that's what philosophy gives you. So how useless is
Also, like AI, at least for me, it's given me so many trust issues. Like I cannot trust anything I find online. Like I will get a source, I will cross-check that it actually exists, I will cross-check that the author actually exists. Like I think because there's so much AI everywhere, even like if I see a reel on Instagram, I'm like, this is probably a deepfake. Like I can't really tell. That's something that scares me because you never know whether the information you're getting is even correct, and you're like relying on it, especially if you're doing research, policy research in my case, or even just like in general, if you're doing podcasts, for example. I think it's just so important to know when it is real and when it is fake. And with the advancement of this technology, like even 2 years ago, you could clearly tell that what was AI and what wasn't AI. Now it's so difficult. Like you have to really, really put an effort into it. And this was like a project I did in university as well. Like we did a whole thing. We were just taking surveys and asking people if they can tell it's deepfakes or not. Maybe like 5% got it right.
That's crazy.
And that's something that's so scary in today's world, because how do you know that the information you're getting, you're able to rely on it? And okay, maybe for like politics or even philosophy, it's something that sparks a discussion. But then if you look at fields of like medicine or engineering, and then current college graduates are using AI to study,
That's
and
not it.
it's a bit,
Yeah.
I don't know, it kind of puts you in this like moral dilemma of whether you want to keep up with the changing society or whether you're actually like learning and internalizing what you're doing, or whether AI is actually, like you said, like is it actually a regression to society, because it's just making you not think for yourself. And I think that is something that's so scary, because when you read books like Fahrenheit 451, for example, I don't know how many of you read it, right? And then I think like whenever I see this happening, I'm thinking of Ray Bradbury, the whole dystopian, and I'm like, we're progressing towards that. And this is a book that was written like years ago, and it's coming true now, and that is something that's so scary today.
But I think that being said, it's completely replaced Google for me. I think it's so perfect.
Absolutely.
As a search engine,
Yeah, I would
I
also
think it's
say,
too good.
except for ChatGPT, there's so many other really
So
good
many.
AI.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
the one I use the most is not that special, but it's Notebook LM, like summarizing papers for me. It was really good. And you brought up a really good point about like the difference in how it's used in the social sciences and humanities and in more like STEM subjects. I had like when I was doing my master's, we had courses on qualitative research and then quantitative research. And the qualitative research, AI barely got brought up, right? We weren't like taught how to use it, or we weren't even like talked about it. It wasn't even talked about. But in my quantitative course where I was doing programming and, using R to analyze data, our professor would constantly say, if you come across a problem, run it through ChatGPT. Like it will give you the answer. So it's more reliance, like the reliance of STEM subjects or more number heavy, data heavy studies on ChatGPT is, yes, it makes your workload really, really easy, right? It really helped me. Like my assignments were done much quicker, but it's also very dangerous because data is inherently also very biased.
Yeah.
Even raw data, there is bias in how you collect it, how you look at it. And then when you're again relying on AI, which is also has a bias, you cannot completely trust the kind of analysis that you're getting from it, and which is also makes the need for like criticality with people even more important.
Exactly.
That people have to be even more skeptical than they were like maybe 10 years ago about what they're reading, what they're seeing, what they're listening to. So it's a slippery slope. And that's why I say like complicated relationship.
Yeah.
Like it's a give and take.
I
Justifiably
also
so.
think that AI obviously has like such a big impact on climate policies, for example. And not even like more than policies, it's just impacting climate change so much because all of these big servers are using so much energy and so much just effort and environmental resources that you question that is it really worth it in the big scale, the longer time frame of things?
Yeah.
Whether
I think that's an important question for all of us to grapple with, because we're the generation that has grown up on the precipice of this understanding that we have in some ways irrevocably damaged the environment. And if we don't change now, there is a hole above the ozone layer in Australia and it needs something done to. The tigers from India have completely disappeared. There's something that needs to be done. We've kind of grown up with all of these developments in our face and with the knowledge that policy from previous generations maybe did this damage and we need to take it forward to save the planet and perhaps leave a better world for the children that we have in the future. With that now, we're also kind of at the forefront of this AI development. And the water consumed, the fact that it runs almost completely on fossil fuels, the fact that mining activity needs to grow and expand for us to be able to run it. The environmental impact is huge, it's astronomical, and it'll have an impact. So how do we reconcile our understanding of the environment with what we need to do for our work, which is keep up with the times and just get good at AI?
I think there has to be a balance, right? Also, I think there's a difference between personal responsibility and structural issues, right? Like if it was up to me, I would change the policy today and make sure that there are things in place to make sure that so much water and our climate is not being compromised just for the sake of, human convenience. Because as a person, you can't do much, right? You can't be the person that gets up and says, okay, it's going to change. It's a gradual change, and you can be a part of that movement. Please be part of that movement if you want. We need more people like that. But I think the balance is in between, knowing that you have to keep up with the change, as you said, that unfortunately you can't avoid using AI, but it's very much about how much you use it. And so that's the difference between like necessary and unnecessary. Necessary use is, okay, I have to use it for my work. I need to make my life easier. I need to get this done today. Unnecessary is like, I'm bored. I want someone to entertain me. Let me talk to ChatGPT. Let me, produce images that are not really like important for work. I'm not doing this to like do what I have to do. I'm just doing it because I can. I think that's the difference between using it because you have to and using it because you just simply can. And the can is what has led us to the place where we are right now, with how bad our air is, how much water we have left on the planet, how many trees are gone. And if we keep going on that route, we won't have a planet that is livable.
I think something really silly is I recently learned that just the words thank you cost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So much water.
Yeah, extra energy and water required just because of all the people who type thank you. And I've always said thank you to like the AI generated voices also that I talk to on the call.
yeah.
I've been saying it to ChatGPT, but now I have stopped saying thank
Yeah.
you to my
Same.
ChatGPT.
Same.
But I think also like in today's world where climate politics are such a huge thing, where because of scarcity, climate has become such a political issue that use of AI somehow like connects into that, and we're thinking like how much, like you said, what is between what is necessary and between what is more frivolous, for example. But what I have also found, and you're in a very similar field to me, so maybe you can add on to this, is that I have fully been able to, at least in the 2 years that I have been doing just research, I have fully been able to do it, like even without AI. I think where I've used AI the most is like where I can't get a specific source and I don't know where to find that link, because obviously the internet is such a big black hole, like there's everything there. But I think like even if today someone told me that, okay, you don't have AI and you need to do research in this field, I think I could fully do it. Like I don't know if it's the same for all of you. Yeah, I think I can absolutely do that.
I think I was running the podcast just fine even before the AI developments. But I think the question is now, all my competitors will be producing twice as much because they'll do it.
I mean,
quicker.
obviously.
So I'll still be producing an episode a week, and there are creators online who will use AI and be producing twice a week. Also, the fact that I freed up so much my time isn't meant for me to go on a vacation now. It means that I can be a better business owner. I'm not engulfed with the nitty-gritty of research for hours on end every week. I can be in brand meetings. I can be traveling and taking, work meetings that need me to be there in person, something I couldn't have done before, and I'm just working completely remotely. There is so much more back-end stuff and administrative stuff I can now engage with as a founder for the company. So I think that's the logic. I think we all would have survived fine without it. If someone snatches it away, it's fine. But
Exactly. I would
be keeping up.
Yeah.
The times and with other like competitors, like you said, very fair.
But I feel like in our generation, especially, we are aware of the issue, but we are not ready to do anything about it. So, like an effort such as Shiv School did, every drop counts. That was a Guinness World Record. I was a part of it, and even if, okay, fine, I don't live in Bangalore, but Bangalore was in a crisis, and whether or not we were experiencing it, but we were there for it. We wanted to support it. There were 1,000+ students, teachers, staff, parents. We all were a part of it. And small efforts as such, they just strike a nerve in you that, okay, you do care about the planet and you do care about the future generations that are to come after you. So I feel whether it's something huge or something small, it just has to make an impact. It has to be meaningful.
To add to what you said, in terms of AI's, the impact that AI has, the development and sustenance of AI, I think a lot of people remain unaware as to the amount of energy and water that's required to run these massive data centers. And with the AI bubble rising, with the demand for AI rising, corporations are stepping in. So the development of these, the construction of these data centers are not going to stop. Right. So to keep up the pace of this development, to constantly train new models while old models are being cast away, requires huge amounts of energy and water. And I think discussions surrounding this aspect of AI remain limited or constrained to academia. Academic circles were actively studying the topic. Which is why it is important that discourses around this aspect percolates to the media. The media should be popularizing topics like these, whereby it actively shows the kind of enormous impact, disruptive impact that AI can have. And especially with the demand rising, the solution is not to stop building data centers. It's how to build them sustainably in a way that doesn't effectively affect resources, how resources are used, because these are with the pace at which these data centers are expected to be constructed, a lot of them will rely on the consumption of fossil fuels.
Right. Which is why we need more like people in policy, in government, people who work in climate policy, organizations to sort of put these solutions forth that, okay, if today for our planet to survive, we need to shut down AI, structures that run AI, then fine, so be it, right? We'll survive. but it will slow down our work, but we'll survive. But we need solutions from more like an institutional solution rather than sort of, I think, and that's something that has been an issue with climate change, is that corporations and government very tactfully blame individual actions in terms of how much that impacts the climate, right? Close your tap. Yes, good. You should close your tap and not let water run. But unfortunately, the Yamuna is polluted because corporations keep dumping their waste there, right? So there are institutional problems for why our planet is dying. So there has to be, of course, there has to be like personal action in terms of using AI very mindfully, but also we need more and more people to take action at a higher level, because how much can we really do, right? We need someone to regulate these spaces. We need someone to say that we're gonna put caps on how much can you set up and how much water can you produce. So I think
We've done it before in the world. I think going back to the ozone layer conversation, like it was a complete worldwide collective effort to prevent the use of chlorofluorocarbons. We've completely switched the problem around. So I think it's definitely, initially when you were saying what you were saying, there was a cynical part of me which said something like, this would never pass any country's bill ever. Like there is no way. And that for capitalism, for all its merits, is a drawback. But no, and then it hit me that we've done it before.
Can be done,
It can be done.
we need more young people there. Like
Absolutely.
there is an amazing politician from Maharashtra, Anish Gawan,
Yeah.
and he talks about this a lot, that there is a reason that young people in India get dissuaded from entering politics, and it's very valid. But we need more young people because they have the ideas and they understand the world a bit better than older people do now. And Indian politics is completely dominated by older people. So young people should feel like, okay, I want to go and join these spaces and try to make some change, no matter how small. But you're right, we need more younger and more, I think, just brighter people up there who can take that action.
Our generation has that enthusiasm, but nobody's ready to take up the step, just because it will take a whole lot of more effort to actually get something done. Because the political structure that we do have, the domination is just not worth going, I feel. So
I disagree. I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think I disagree that it's not worth going. I mean, look at women who 50 years ago were entering politics in a country that looked completely different. We are, if anything, the most privileged generation of young people this country has ever seen. And if we are saying we can't enter Indian politics because it's too hard and it's too corrupt, like everyone has had it worse than we've had it. We have a larger voice, more access to be able to express that voice than ever before. And so we can't be the ones who are getting cynical. And I feel this with, I don't know, with people our age a lot, over the amount of people who I've heard say that the climate is so bad that I don't want to have children because I don't want to bring them into a world that's dying. Is such a cynical opinion to me, and it's so unfortunate. So for anyone who wants to enter Indian politics, there has been no better time, in my opinion.
Right.
I think that's also a great point to talk about privilege in that way, right? We also all come from a lot of privilege, and we went to a school which allows us to use that privilege really well. But of course, our peers have also been really, really privileged. And if anyone can sort of take the risks of doing something that requires courage and risks, it's really like us and people who are around us. And as you said, like it's a cynical view, and we should feel like we can do it. And because we have the resources to, right? If not us, then who will do it? We can't just sit and be like, oh, this sucks. What to do about it?
The enthusiasm is there. We just need to make a movement.
But more to that, I mean, even though it's a cynical view, it is a very real view. Because like you've said, a lot of the youth is of that opinion, which also explains the kind of brain drain that India is going through as well. But a lot of populations are moving to look abroad, are looking abroad in search of better whatever benefits are there. But it is important that we, like everyone said, that it's important that we also have a collective consensus on the idea that we need to make changes to a system that's against us.
Yeah, and I think the reason it feels like this cynical view of the world is so common among us, has very little to do with facts, because if you see the facts, there is this fantastic TED Talk online by Steven Pinker, who's a professor, and his entire life's research is dedicated to the question of, are we better today than we were 100 years ago, 200 years ago? And on every single metric other than climate change, we are better today than we've ever been, whether it's literacy rates, it's infant mortality rates, it's poverty rates, it's people dying from basic diseases, access to basic medication. Every single metric you can possibly conceive in the world, we are better today than we were 200 years ago. So our opinion, our cynicism, it's not backed by facts at all. It's backed by the news cycle. It's backed by how news has changed, how much news we have access to, the fact that news needs clicks and it has a 24-hour shelf life and it needs to generate more and create paranoia for you to click. I have a very strong opinion on this. So
it's also important for like young people to have uncomfortable conversations with older people about what these ideas mean, and that's when you sort of bring these ideas into public limelight, right? In our everyday conversations, a lot of times people have asked me, being like, if you're dissatisfied with the political situation, dissatisfied with how society is, how culture is, what can you really do as an individual person? And one thing that we can definitely do is talk about it, right?
sure.
You are in a situation, you're having a great hangout, you're with your friends, and every time you bring up something political or something societal, it's always like, don't be a Debbie Downer, you know, like, let's not talk about this. And I'm like, why not? I think it's exactly where we should be talking about these ideas. If not, then where will we do that?
And I think the key to be able to have those conversations is just completely foregoing the concept of offense, at least with people that you're very close to and you know have best intentions at heart and they love you. They just might come from very different places. On some level, you have to just accept that you will be offended and you will offend. That is the nature of disagreement. And you come from two different generations sometimes, or two very different lives lived. And neither's end goal is to cause harm to society at large.
Absolutely.
The end goal is the same. Everyone wants society to kind of be a better place for everyone to live in at large. It's just the ways we're getting there is different. And so I think if an older generation of people and a younger generation of people can be less offended with each other, I think we would all have great conversations.
Absolutely.
I think one thing we would all agree on, that age doesn't bring you much knowledge and wisdom. Like, you have to gain it.
I think that is a pretty simple way to put it, but I also learn a lot of things from older people that I could never learn from young people. And you learn something from everyone. Like when I was at Oxford, I was doing a master's degree. So I had a lot of peers who were much, much older to me. And most of my friends were predominantly in their late 20s or early 30s. And I actually learned to not be too pressurized through them, right? Because they would look at an assignment and an exam and they'd be like, it's not really that, it's not that deep, basically. Like, things happen. Life is always going to be messy. Life is always going to be complicated. You're going to always have to constantly figure things out. This one exam, just because you get a distinction on it, is not going to mean that life from here is like free flowing. But if I was only with people my age, we would all be stressing each other out. Right? So I learned that from people older than me because they have that experience, right? Yes, it's annoying when your parents are like, we have experience, let us tell you. But it's always good to like take some and leave some. So take all the good things and all the good knowledge they're telling you about life because you haven't seen enough. And a lot of times the things that they tell you are actually super, super useful and that you can carry on with you and gonna just benefit you no matter what. And a lot of times they're also telling it for your benefit. Like they're not coming from a place of bad faith. It's always good faith. So take them as they come, I think, is what I've realized with older people.
And I think we bring different things to the table as different generations. Like you said, I think they bring in the experience. We maybe bring in a better understanding of the world as it stands today. So when we're saying things aren't like that anymore, I think that's where they can hear us a little bit. And when they bring in years of experience, either in relationships with people, either in the workforce, the discipline that they have and whatnot, those are things we haven't had to live by year after year after year for decades on and so far. And I feel like that's where they come in. So
giving a line of communication is very important. I think more than trying to change different perspectives, it is very important just to talk about them. Like, obviously everyone comes from a certain positionality. Like everyone knows where they're coming from. They're coming from a certain background, from a certain experience, and you will never find someone with the exact same experience as you. So just keeping that line of communication open, I think, is super important between different generations, especially, but also just between friend groups or circles or different people that you meet. That you've got to understand that they're coming from different places, and like you said, you will be offended, they will be offended, but there's like there's like a line to fall between that, as long as you're not like disparaging someone or actively like with the intent to harm someone or someone's opinions. I think that even the worst of opinions come from like a certain place or like a certain environment, certain conditioning, certain experiences.
For sure.
And I think it's just really important to like be open and just listen to it.
And also engage with them in like good faith. Something I realized with my mom is that we disagree on a lot of things, and as I was growing up, we would butt heads a lot about how I want to do things and how she would want to do things. And initially, when I was much younger, it would be a lot of aggressive arguing back and forth. It's like, no, I want to do this, you should do this. And over time, I realized that just having a calm conversation with her and explaining to her how my like thought process is, like why I think A, B, C, and why it makes sense to me, she took it much better. And then she would reciprocate. Like she would also very calmly tell me, okay, but this is how I'm thinking. And you come to like sort of like a common space between each other. So, you know, understanding each other to know that no one's trying to like push you into a bad situation. It's all good faith. And I have seen my mom evolve a lot of her thoughts because of the conversations I've had with her, like her changing her mind on therapy, on marriage, on like just I have exposed to text on feminism, and she's read it and she's had these aha moments. And she's like, oh my God, I'm learning so much. And you can see that joy in her that I get to learn from my daughter, and then vice versa. Like I get to learn so much from her. And so it's like a calm, we still disagree about a lot of things, but at least we can do it in a way that's conversational rather than we're out to get each other.
Is this about filling the generation gap?
I'm remembering that the people at the end of it, like they're living their first life. I read that online somewhere, and I was like, oh, that's really cute.
Perspective. Like, for some reason, you have this impression about your parents that
they were born this age.
That but they're only my parents. That's their job. They're my
that's
parents.
what
They're always going to be right. They have to be right. You like pedestalize them in a way, right? And then when you realize that they're also humans at the end of it, like they're parenting for the first time, they haven't it all figured out. You get so much empathy for them, and you kind of do it with them after a point. And a lot of times when you grow older, I don't know if you guys experience this, you parent them a lot of times. You're like, have you eaten your medicine? Go for a walk.
I have a dad who grew up in sort of the absolute hinterland of Uttar Pradesh. So he's lived his life in like Aligarh. So to him to have a daughter living in Delhi NCR was a huge, just like I don't think he fully knew what to do with those two things colliding together, having lived his life in the middle of nowhere like Uttar Pradesh. And just watching him grow into like my fiercest supporter. We had so many fights over what to dress in, what times to be out at night. It doesn't have we used to live in Greater Noida again, not the safest places to be. And he came from the most loving places, but it always felt like we would butt heads on the same few topics of just letting me be who I am. But it's been again so wonderful seeing him grow along with me, and me learning to understand him learning to understand me. And there are days we still butt heads, but we're different people now, and we're like best buds, and it's all good.
That's so sweet.
I think more of what you said, I think that slight change in perspective, that they're also living life for the first time. They didn't have it all figured out, and they were once children just like us. It really sort of teaches you to be kind and be empathetic. It's just having a conversation, having a calm conversation with your parents will solve a lot of things. Like for disagreements, you don't have to take it out in other ways. And that's a privilege that a lot of households don't have, or a lot of children can't afford. But the fact that we're able to have open conversations, have that conversation, it's an uncomfortable conversation, like you said. But having that also sort of lends depth to the relation as well.
Absolutely.
It's like you move a step further. And even with disagreements, I don't know, someone said, but when you're initially becoming friends with someone and 3 or 4 months later there's a disagreement and then you just don't feel like talking to them. Someone was saying that even a disagreement is a milestone in a relationship.
Yeah, it is.
even that also sort of changes perspectives.
On that note, I have a book recommendation, which is like somewhere right there, it's a book by this philosophy professor at University of Michigan, and his name is Scott Hershowitz. And he basically, the name of the book is Nasty, Brutish and Short, Adventures in Philosophy with Kids. So he sort of writes about different ideas in philosophy, from authority to power, all of these things that seem very like heavy and philosophical, but he writes them about like through conversations with his kids, like questions that his 5 and 8-year-old have asked him. And he puts it across so wonderfully that more than a philosophy book, it feels like a way for parents to understand, like, how do you communicate with your children, especially when they throw questions at you, because they will, because they're kids.
Yeah.
And he deals with them so amazingly in a way that not only makes them feel validated, but also makes them feel like your questions are valid and they're very, very smart, and you can have intellectual conversations through those questions, right? And I think that's, so as much as it is like a kid's responsibility to say that I'm going to engage with my parents in good faith, I think for parents it's so important to encourage questions from your kids, and not just say, no, and then your kid says why, and you just say because I said so. But why, right? Engage with them in that back and forth, and that's what makes them a good student going forward, a good human being, and just a curious, critical person when they grow up, because they have never been told no, that don't ask questions. It's so important to ask questions. So I think it's a great book for like not just kids, but also parents. Like, you get a little bit of philosophy and you get a little bit parenting advice.
Another book I've been recommending to like everyone on the same lines is The Little Prince. Like,
oh yes,
that's by Untitled, and it's so nice because it's a kid's book. It's also like really well translated. I think even the English version is great. It's a kid's book. It's fully like meant for children, but I read it when I was like 17, 18, and I think it's great. And every time I read the book, I come to new conclusions. And it's the same. I'm recommending, like my mom, I'm telling her that you need to read this book because it's something that explores the question of why, like you say, how to just, you're being conditioned a certain way or you grow a certain way. You're just being taught to fit into those boxes. And this is the kind of book where the character is constantly questioning who he is as an adult. The narrator and Sunny is again and again, he's going like, this is what I was as a kid. And this kid who I'm currently talking to is just asking me all of these silly questions that I used to ask as a kid. And I was taught not to ask these questions. And you learn just like, I think your perspective completely changes from that book. So if you get a chance, you should read that.
Do you guys want to recommend something, a show, a movie, and we can end on that?
Yeah.
I was reading Shashi Tharoor's book, his famous Oxford speech, which motivated him to write about colonialism in India. And I was just coming across that, and it's actually mind-boggling to think the kind of way in which the entire subcontinent was plundered and ravaged. So it's quite eye-opening, if anything.
And that speech is fantastic.
Fantastic.
yeah.
The number of people I've shown it to is. I recently started reading the Devdutt Patnaik illustrated Mahabharata.
Oh, thank God.
And I really wanted to buy it, and then I realized it's actually available on Zepto. And it reaches your house in 10 minutes. I was like, I didn't know Zepto did this. And so I ordered it, and it's actually really beautifully done. I just got into it. So that's one rec from me.
Amazing.
And with that, we've come to an end to the first Shiv Nadar School Roundtable, and we can't wait to have more such conversations. We'd love for you to join in whenever the second one releases.